Hola! This instructional video is about regular Spanish AR verb conjugation and usage. My name is Nefertari M. Thompson, and I will be your instructor. As I'm sure you know, complete sentences must contain verbs, the verb being the action or the state of being in a sentence. The subject of the sentence must do something, there's the action, or have certain characteristics, there's your state of being. Otherwise, the sentence will make absolutely no sense. Here's a little analogy for you. The same way that the car got stuck, your sentence will get stuck unless it has something in it to make it go, like gas in a car. Take a look at this sentence. The boy to his grandmother's house. How is he? What's he doing? We don't know because the sentence doesn't have a verb. But when you put the verb in, everything makes sense because the boy actually has a purpose as he's on his way to his grandmother's house. The same way that when you put the right gas in a car, the verb will go, the sentence will go. When you put the right verb in a sentence, the sentence will go. The verb and the subject must be in the same person, first, second, third, and number, singular or plural, for them to agree. By person, I mean who are we speaking of, and by number, I mean how many people are we speaking of. The action that you just saw was a sponge washing the dish. So, he washes, I wash, they wash. I wouldn't say they washes or I washes or he wash because that subject and verb are not in the same person and number, so they don't make sense. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the subject pronouns because if you're at this point with understanding Spanish, you've already covered subject pronouns and you understand that these are what they mean in Spanish. What I will show you, however, is that each pronoun has its own spot in this chart. That's very important because we're going to link conjugation to this particular chart later on. So if you need to pause the video for a second to jot this down in case you got a little bit mixed up about it, look at where everything is in this chart. It's important because later on when we conjugate, we're going to use this information. Now, in Spanish, the verb and the subject must also be in the same person and number, singular or plural, for them to agree. That's the exact same rule as it is in English, no difference at all. The same pronouns that we had before, now we have them in Spanish. And as you can see, each particular one has its own conjugated form of the verb. That's important. Make sure you understand that chart so that you can link the conjugation to it when it's time. Now, we use subject pronouns, surprise, surprise, when conjugating verbs. Conjugation means showing all persons of a verb in one tense. Again, if you have to stop and highlight something or stop and write something down, that's very important. Conjugation means showing all persons of a verb, first, second, and third, singular and plural, in one tense. We don't usually mix up all the tenses in one chart because we don't want to confuse anyone. And for our purposes, all verbs we discuss will be in the present indicative tense, which indicates action that is true and currently taking place. Verbs that end in AR are called AR infinitives, which is what we're really talking about. What's an infinitive, you may ask? And again, if you need to pause and take notes, please do. Infinitives are verbs that have not been conjugated yet. They're not in the chart. They do not have a subject. They have two parts, stem and ending. More about that in a minute. The definitions of infinitives begin with to, as in hablar, to speak. That's normally the first AR verb that Spanish students normally encounter. And infinitives must be conjugated for them to be used as the main verb in a sentence. All regular AR verbs have a stem and an ending. Just discussed that, right? The ending will always be AR. That's before it's conjugated. The stem is the rest of the verb. For example, here's the preliminary verb again, hablar. I'm looking at it, spelled Hablar. The stem is Habl and AR is the ending. I often have students that ask me, well, Ms. Thompson, what if I have a really long verb that's 100 letters long? I tell them, well, if you have 100 letters, subtract 2 from 100 and what do you get? 98, right? The 98 is the stem and the 2 leftover letters, your AR, that's going to be your ending every time. You can't get it wrong. Now, to put an AR infinitive in a conjugated form, you drop the AR and you add on the ending that matches the subject. Here's hablar, meaning to speak. That's an infinitive. When we throw away the AR, watch what happens. It now has a subject, you speak. Your ending is now AS because it has been conjugated. So, here's that pronoun chart again. And if you look, here are your endings. O, as, a, amos, ais, an. Did you notice that there's exactly one ending per box? That's because if the subject and the verb are in the conjugation box together, they agree. If you make sure you know where your endings go with the subject, you really cannot get this wrong. Simply follow the pattern and it's all to the good. One thing I do want you to notice right here with the second person plural is that there's an accent mark right here on ice. Accent marks in Spanish are very important, and I'm sure you've probably encountered this from your instructor before. They're part of spelling. Something I like to show my students is this word, P-A-P-A, papa, which means father, potato, and then P-A-P-A with an accent, papa, which means father. So what I tell them is if you don't want to call your dad Mr. Potato Head, don't forget the accent mark. So let's take a look. Pause the video for a second. Try to figure out what this infinitive will become with the given subject. Did you get it? Nosotros cantar becomes nosotros cantamos. Let's try one more. We've got usted bailar. Pause a second and try. Did you get it? Usted baila. All you do is look at your chart and remember what goes where, and you won't get confused. So, here we have hablar, to speak, completely conjugated with the endings, and notice the stem is the same every time. This subject goes with this verb, and these subjects go with that verb. If it's in the box together, it agrees. And it's important for you to know what agrees because you pull these out when you put them in sentences. There's good news about AR verb conjugation. All regular AR verbs follow the same conjugation pattern, so if you can do one, you can do them all. Doesn't matter which AR verb it is. If it's a regular verb, because there are some that are irregular, but if it's a regular verb, if you can do one, you can do them all. Pause a second and try this one. Let's check it. Yo canto, tú cantas, él, ella, usted canta, nosotros, nosotras cantamos, vosotros, vosotras cantáis, ellos, ellas, ustedes cantan. I hope you got it right, and if you didn't, you can always go back and practice again with your endings and your notes. It's really not that hard. The one thing that I need you to remember is that subjects and verbs must always, always, always agree. That is a non-negotiable. Person and number make the difference. So, when a verb agrees with the subject and is in its correctly conjugated form, it could be pulled out and used as the main verb in a sentence. So what are the takeaways from this lesson? Complete sentences must have verbs. Regular AR infinitives must be conjugated to make them usable as the main verb in a sentence. Subjects and verbs must agree in person and in number. And all regular AR verbs follow the same conjugation pattern. That's it. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below, and I'll respond as soon as I can. Happy conjugating. Adios.